Trigger warning. This episode is going to discuss rape against a minor teenage girl. It's also going to discuss the acts of necrophilia. If this isn't something that you'd like to hear about, check out the next episode. But for today, we are going to be discussing the murder of Elyse Pahler. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Always Talking Crime podcast. This is episode 27, and I already gave you your trigger warnings. I know that sometimes I forget because I guess my attitude is sort of that this is a true crime podcast. You can pretty much tell by the subject of the episode as well as all of the information that I put in the description of the episode. You can pretty much already tell what you're going to be in for, but I actually remembered to put a literal trigger warning in there. So this is going to be your last chance to skip this episode if rape of a minor and necrophilia is not your thing. And I don't know if it's really many people's thing. Apparently, there's a few people that we're going to talk about in this episode that it is their thing. So this is a really gruesome and heartbreaking story. And first and foremost, I do want to point out and remind everybody, like we don't already all know this, but you know, this happened to a real life teenage girl, and her family is still suffering greatly to this day because of her loss. So, you know, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I do this episode as respectfully as I can. You know, I feel really bad for this family that has to continue to, you know, relive this nightmare every morning that they wake up. So with no further ado, I am going to jump right into it with you. And I do want to say, I'm not a California girl, and a lot of the names of towns and things in California are kind of confusing. I don't speak Spanish, so if I mispronounce something, I'm sorry ahead of time. I'm going to do my best, okay? And let's get on with it. Elyse Mary Pahler was born on April 24th of 1980 in Arroyo Grande, California, to parents David and Lizanne, and she'd lived there for all of her short life. In the 1990s, the town had a population of only 15,000 people, so it was basically a very quiet and peaceful place to live. It was definitely not a place where one would think that crimes of a brutal nature would ever happen. Elyse lived with her parents and her 3 younger siblings. From a very young age, she had attracted attention for her beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes. One of her childhood dreams was to participate in beauty contests and to eventually become an actress. She was reportedly an amazing soccer player, and in her early teens, she spent a lot of time with her family and attended church on a regular basis. But everything changed once Elyse turned 15. This is about when she hit that, you know, rebellious teenage stage. I guess it's the rebellious stage that I personally think most teenagers all hit around that same age. Elyse started smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and she was also starting to sneak out of the house at night more and more often. Her parents were really worried about her, but their concern escalated when they got a call from her school one day. The school explained to them that Elyse had been noticeably under the influence of something, and she was being suspended from school. So apparently, Elyse had smoked some weed and drank some alcohol that morning before school had even started. Her parents immediately put Elyse into a substance abuse program, and they tried to openly talk to her about what was going on with her. But Elyse refused to communicate with them. It was when she was taken to this drug rehabilitation center that she had met 15-year-old Jacob DeLashmute. Their friendship led Elyse to meet two other teenage boys. Their names were Joseph Fiorella and Royce Casey. They had all attended the same high school as Elyse. Well, not Royce Casey. I heard that he went to a different school, but the other two boys did attend the same high school that Elyse went to, but they had previously been expelled. So these three young men were very well known by the entire community to be troublemakers. On the night of July 22nd, 1995, Elyse was headed to bed. She had spent the evening hanging out at home watching a movie with her family. They had had a great night together, and she received a phone call from one of the boys and, swiftly, told everybody, that she was going to bed. When she was just about to get into bed, or maybe pretend to get into bed, Elyse yelled out to her family, "Good night, I love you." And as far as her parents knew, Elyse was turning in for the evening. But what she actually did was place a bunch of pillows strategically underneath her covers so that it would look like she was in bed asleep if anyone came in to check on her. After she did that, she quietly snuck through the French doors of her bedroom. And oh my God, little side note, I love French doors so much, but I would never want them in any of my children's rooms. I've heard that they are actually the easiest doors ever to break into, and I'd be constantly terrified. Apparently, Royce had called Elyse and invited her to a place not far from his house so that they could all smoke some pot and just chat. So she quickly accepted because she liked to smoke weed. They were actually going to meet up at the nearby Nipomo Mesa eucalyptus grove. And this was also only a quarter of a mile from Elyse's house as well, from what I learned in my research. And I'm sure that every parent out there that's listening to this podcast right now are right there with me, shaking their heads and yelling, "No, no, no, don't sneak out, Elyse." Because that's the first thing I was thinking when, I read that. Don't do it. Just stay home. Be a good girl. Go to sleep. But when Elyse met with the three guys, everything did seem normal. And there was nothing out of the ordinary that would have tipped Elyse off to the danger that she was actually in. When the trio decided to act, Royce held her arm so that she could not fight back, and Jacob managed to fasten a belt around Elyse's neck and continued to tighten it. Joseph then pulled a hunting knife out from a sheath in his pocket, and he plunged that knife straight into Elyse's neck. All three of the boys began stabbing her over and over again. They were taking turns. Elyse prayed. This is so heartbreaking. Elyse prayed and cried out for her mother and to Jesus to help her as the stabbings continued. On top of stabbing her, they also began stomping on Elyse's neck because she wasn't dying fast enough for them. An autopsy report later revealed that Elyse had been stabbed a total of 12 times. All of the stab wounds were determined to have been non-fatal, which this meant that Elyse was forced to slowly and painfully bleed to death as the boys stood there waiting impatiently. Before leaving the scene of the crime, all three of the boys then took turns raping Elyse's lifeless corpse. And get ready to hear some of the grossest shit ever. All three of these motherfuckers would return several times over the next 8 months to have sex with Elyse's decomposing corpse. It's just fucking brutal, man. Can't even believe that somebody would actually do that. Anyways, the next morning, once Elyse's parents realized that she was not in her bed, they obviously freaked the fuck out, as any parent probably would. They were aware that she had been sneaking out before because they had actually caught her once, but she always came back. They knew for a fact that she would have never been gone all night long and into the morning hours. So they immediately went to the police and explained what was going on. Police were concerned, of course, but because this was a 15-year-old girl that was missing, they began treating the disappearance as more of a runaway type of situation. Her family really did not believe that this was the case, though. After all, they were all planning to move to a new town soon, and Elyse was really excited about that. She was pretty much a social butterfly and a free spirit, so she wasn't at all worried about moving and making new friends. That had never been a problem for her in the past. So the entire family told police that Elyse would have never run away from home, and there was no reason for her to. And of course, as you can pretty much imagine, news of a missing 15-year-old girl from California had everybody talking, with different theories being thrown around from basically every angle. Soon there were tons of tips starting to come in, and a lot of people were calling in claiming to have seen Elyse. But come on now, like, California is full of blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls, and the case ended up remaining at a literal standstill for the next 8 months. I mean, I think it's awesome that people were calling in and, like, looking for her and being proactive and really paying attention. But, I mean, it's crazy. Like, not that everybody is blonde hair, blue-eyed, but California has a lot of blonde hair, blue-eyed, girls, women. So I'm sure that they were getting all kinds of crazy tips that, just really led to nowhere. But good on them, like I said, for calling. This is, like, totally heartbreaking, you guys. Like, if everything I haven't said already hasn't been heartbreaking enough, listen to this. There was even one point that Elyse's grandmother, who she was named after, by the way, and, like, this is like, I'm not crying, you're crying, because that's just, like, stab me in the heart, why don't you, So anyway, Grandma Elyse sent out a televised plea directly to her granddaughter in case she had run away, or in case she had been kidnapped and, was somehow watching the news. Grandma Elyse begged Elyse to come back and stay with her while everything in the family got figured out. In all actuality, police may have never ever found Elyse's body if it wasn't for a very surprising confession from one of the young perpetrators. Almost a year after Elyse's disappearance, randomly and completely out of the blue, this young man walked into the police department claiming that he knew what had happened to Elyse Pahler. The young man's name was Royce Casey, who was at that time 17 years old. He was able to lead the authorities to the location where Elyse's body was. Elyse's partially mummified remains were scattered in the woods very close to her home. Royce told police that Joseph and Jacob were also involved in the crime. He gave them all of the details about their crimes, as well as the reason why they had killed Elyse in the first place. He told them that it had been a religious sacrifice. Elyse's 3 friends had apparently started a heavy metal band, which they named Hatred, which makes me roll my eyes and be like, nice name, bruh. Like, that's just the stupidest name that I've ever heard. But they were reportedly inspired by the famous band called Slayer. Their interest in Satanism and the occult quickly appeared in their music style. Joseph personally consumed a lot of Satanism and occult-related content. He was one of the first out of the group who hinted at supernatural practices with his friends. When he realized they were, he began to share his thoughts with them. So although Joseph was the youngest and he was like the little pipsqueak of the group, he had the most knowledge on the subject, and he actually became the leader of the entire operation. After becoming the leader of the group, Joseph continued his education in all things about Satan and all things about any kind of supernatural topic. He researched everything about Satan and Satanism, and they started communication online with other people who also shared their beliefs. They started breaking into graveyards to look at graves that they could rob. Just nasty. The band was not very successful, but Joseph seemed to have what he thought was the perfect solution. He told the other 2 teenage boys that they should sacrifice a young virgin in an offering to the devil. And in return, the devil would reward them with money and fame. The other 2 thought the idea was crazy and completely insane, but they quickly gave in to Joseph. The trio spent months planning how they would do it, and they all knew instantly that the perfect victim for their plan was their friend, Elyse Pahler. I should have said, quote unquote, friend Elyse Pahler, but yeah. At the time of the murder, all 3 of the guys were underage. Royce told the police that this had not even been their first attempt to kill Elyse. According to him, they had all previously lured her out for a walk with the intention of killing her, but something had gone wrong and they had to give up on the plan. The teens had lured Elyse to another remote area with the promise of weed and alcohol. When Royce pretended to slip down a steep ravine, all of the boys believed that she would follow him down there. When that happened, Joseph tossed him a knife, and both he and Jacob both started chanting, "Do it, do it." But Royce just stood there like a deer in the headlights. He figured that Elyse must have thought they were just being crazy and joking around, which is why she never reported the incident and why she had agreed to even meet up with the boys again late at night. Royce said that he decided to come forward to police because only a few months after the murder, he made the decision to cut ties with the other 2, and he began attending church. In his statement, Royce said that he was really afraid that the other 2 boys would turn on him because, surprisingly, Jacob and Joseph had made it very clear that they would kill again in Satan's name. He believed that he too would eventually become a victim of his former friends. The 3 boys were all tried separately, which had to have been 3 times as heartbreaking and stressful for Elyse's family to go through. Joseph Fiorella reached a plea agreement where he pled guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 26 years. Joseph had filed a habeas corpus petition to say he wasn't mentally competent at the time of the murder and didn't know what he was doing. However, Casey testified honestly that Joseph Fiorella did understand the nature of their crime. This was an opportunity for Casey to tell the truth and cement his value system. Royce Casey did not contest the life sentence, and he was sentenced with parole after a minimum of 21 years. Jacob DeLashmute also pled guilty to the first-degree murder charge. But Jacob changed his motive. Time always has a way of changing people's minds and opinions. When killers give their crime some thought after sitting in jail for a while, they usually end up revising what their motive was. So in Jacob's case, he had a complete change of heart about what had actually pushed him to murder Elyse. Before the trial, he agreed that Slayer's lyrics pushed them to commit a crime. However, after he spent a few years in prison, he was pointing the blame at someone else. He turned the entire thing on Joseph Fiorella and Joseph's obsession with Elyse. None of them had a good explanation for why they did it. Jacob was sentenced to life in prison with the right to parole after a minimum of 26 years. All three of the boys had admitted during the trials that they were inspired to kill by the music of that band called Slayer. Elyse's family even filed a lawsuit against the band, claiming that their songs made an apology for crime, violence, and murder. In a later interview from jail, Jacob DeLashmute said their lives were dominated by drugs, which included marijuana, meth, LSD, as well as, listening to death metal music. Jacob said it was harmless at first because they were just having fun like making music. However, he said that Joseph started studying the Slayer lyrics as if they had a much deeper meaning than they actually did. Joseph once admitted that, afterwards, that it was embarrassing how influenced he had actually been by Slayer's music. He said it went from daydreaming to action. Now, if you look at the lyrics of one of Slayer's songs, it's a song called 213 or 213. I don't know how you say it. Anyways, it just says 213. 213. It describes, I've never heard this song, by the way. I'm familiar with Slayer. I don't know if I've heard it. I mean, I'm a rocker girl, so I love rock music, like hard rock music even. Like I go to music festivals and all that kind of stuff, and but I am not familiar with Slayer or any of their lyrics. But this particular song, it describes the cause of Elyse's murder better than any other. This is what the lyrics say. Erotic sensations tingle my spine. A dead body lying next to mine. Smooth blue-black lips. I start salivating as we kiss. Mine forever, this sweet death. And then it continues with, how I love to kill you. Just so disturbing. Slayer ended up commenting on the accusations from the Pahler family. And in interviews, all four members of that band denied that their music is anything but fantasy. The lead vocalist said, quote, "We're part-time evil. If we were really evil, we would be doing everything we were writing about," end quote. According to the people who work with them, their public image is just an act, and they are actually very nice human beings. When the group was asked about the Elyse Pahler murder, they said, quote, They're trying to blame the whole thing on us. They also said that it was wrong, and the people who committed the murders are the ones to blame, not them. After that, Slayer refused to talk anymore about the murder. So the comments that Slayer, that the band, the people in the band Slayer made, it infuriated Elyse's parents. After hearing those comments, Elyse's parents were angry because they truly believed the music influenced the boys to kill their daughter. Elyse's father, David, even said, quote, "What are we talking about here? We have children ending their lives because lyrics say they're worthless, and boys taking Elyse's life all for money." The case was dismissed, however. According to the judge, the band's lyrics are indeed repulsive and shocking, but he didn't feel that they encouraged listeners to go out and commit cruel acts that would result in a person's death. In the year 2021, just last year, Royce got his first chance for parole. Members of Elyse's family did not oppose his release, and he had a record of over 20 years of good behavior in prison. Royce attended several rehabilitation programs. He completed high school, and he was pursuing a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology. At his parole hearing, he expressed regret for the crime he committed. Casey told the commissioners that in his past, he tried to please people to protect himself, but through the various programs that he had participated in for those past 2 decades that he spent in prison, he had learned self-acceptance. When he was asked what attracted him to the demonic, ritualistic type of thinking that led him to participate in the murder of Elyse, he said that he was full of rage at that time and that his attitude then endorsed violence. He went on to tell them that he thought at the time that violence was the appropriate way to express his anger, and he also thought it was an appropriate way to prove that he wasn't weak and to prove that he was in control. Royce said that he hadn't consumed drugs or alcohol since shortly before his arrest, and that he no longer listens to metal music. When he was asked about his understanding of the impact of his crime, Royce said the first thing that comes to mind is, quote, "How immense the suffering is that I caused. That Elyse doesn't have her life anymore because of me. She had to feel so much pain and terror while I was murdering her." End quote. In his closing statement, Casey told the panel that Elyse Pahler had been fighting for her life and he was still carrying on with his intent to murder her. Quote, "Nothing I can ever say or nothing that I can ever do will ever bring back the life that she could have had, the life she had for her or her parents. I'm ashamed by the person that I was then, and I'm disgusted by the person that I was then. I'm ashamed that I took her entire future away. She was a truly wonderful person who was loving, vibrant, enthusiastic, encouraging, and gentle. It breaks my heart to think how much she lost because of me. She never got to graduate from high school or go to her prom. She never got to go to college or fall in love and get married. She never got to be a mom. Those things broke through the denial that I had, and those things helped me to be able to see that there was something deeper I needed to look at to understand that it was my defects that led me to this, not my co-defendants, not music, and not drugs, end quote. Royce was to receive his parole, but then a California state's attorney wrote a letter to the governor opposing this release. In the document, he claimed that Royce never adequately explained why he agreed to participate in such a sadistic crime. On July 9th of 2021, Governor Newsom reversed his parole. He stated, quote, "I have determined that Mr. Casey must do additional work to deepen his insight into the causative factors of his crime and coping skills before he can be safely released on parole." Royce Casey's legal team, which was led by Charles Carbone, I think Carbone, yeah, it says Carbon, Carbone. Anyways, that's who was leading the legal team, appealed this decision through a document that was called Writ of Habeas Corpus. The legal team stated, because of the crime, not because of who Royce is today, the governor opposed the release and that it is just not in accord with the law. Royce Casey isn't serving a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Obviously, he is serving one with the possibility of parole. So on June 6th of 2022, which was just last freaking month, San Luis Obispo County Superior Court Judge Craig Van Ruin granted Casey's petition. He said, after review of the record, the court cannot find evidence to support the governor's decision and therefore grants the requested relief and reinstates the board's grant of parole. The case probably wouldn't even have been solved or likely would have gone unsolved without Royce coming forward very early on the case. Casey's attorneys say he has turned his life around completely behind bars. He hasn't committed any further crimes. He's educated himself. He's been developing marketable skills. He has profound remorse and regret and shame. He counsels and mentors other prisoners inside. He's an exceptional person. His crime is forever deplorable, but he is not as a human being that same child that he once was when he committed the crime 27 years ago. San Luis Obispo County District Attorney Dan Dow disagrees with the outcome. He says, quote, "While we respect the decision of Judge Van Ruren, we are disappointed with the effect of the order. We agree with the governor's finding that Mr. Casey needs to demonstrate additional insight into the causative factors of his crime and coping skills before he can be safely released on parole." As for Elyse's family, her death, of course, will continue to bring pain, but they are not opposing Casey's release. The family was basically prepared for him to be paroled someday. They all know it's going to happen at some point, and for the most part, the family is at peace with the decision. They know that Royce has generally been an honor inmate while he's been in prison. They know he's really tried to reform his life and make, better of himself. Generally, it's not a unanimous feeling throughout the family, but as a whole, the family has accepted the fact that Royce Casey, will be released, and, that he is sorry for the crime that he committed. According to Carbone, the California Attorney General's office has 60 days to appeal this decision. If they decide not to appeal, then a parole date will be set for Royce Casey. Attorney Alan Hutkin said the Pahler family strongly opposes any type of parole for Jacob DeLashmu and Joseph Fiorella. And I don't fucking blame them, because those two guys have shown no remorse whatsoever. Joseph Fiorella, 40, is incarcerated at High Desert State Prison in Susanville. He's tentatively scheduled for a suitability hearing in July 2022, this month, after waiving his right to hearings back in 2019 and March of 2021. I guess that a lot of times prisoners will waive your right to a parole hearing if you don't really have any solid plans or any place to go, when you get out of prison. I mean, that's got to be crazy. Like, they were teenagers when they went into prison, and I don't know the dynamics of the Fiorella family, if they come to visit him, if they're going to help him, if he were to be paroled. But a lot of times, in my research, I had heard, that that's kind of what they do. If they, they have to be able to tell the parole board where they're going to go and show some remorse for their fucking crime. And Joseph Fiorella fucking does not do that. Jacob DeLashmu, he's 41. I think he's the biggest fucking asshole of all of them, honestly. He is housed at the Correctional Training Facility in Soledad. He was denied parole for 7 years, and at a December 2017 suitability hearing, but then he filed a petition in June of 2021 to advance his next hearing, scheduled for December 2024. So he's actively trying to get out. But I've still heard that he doesn't show any fucking remorse whatsoever. And as far as like the three of them, even though Fiorella is the one that was kind of the mastermind, like the little puny kid, he was the mastermind. Even though he's not showing a lot of remorse, it's Jacob that seems to be the least remorseful, at least from anything that I can read. I could be wrong, but from what I understand, like, he's trying to get out, but he probably won't get out anytime soon, because, the parole board they're all gonna want to hear that, he's remorseful before they would ever even think about letting him get out. The Pahlers have really struggled to move on with their lives. And, I totally understand it. I can't even imagine. Like, I'm a mother. I have 4 children that are all adults now. And, I can't imagine how you move on successfully from something like this. I imagine that their day, like, it starts off. I mean, I don't even imagine that they ever open their eyes in the morning and not think of Elyse first thing. I really, really feel for that family. But anyways, they moved to another home because it reminded them too much of the murder. And Elyse's father, David, switched careers after losing interest in his contracting company completely. I guess, they all had to go through bankruptcy, file bankruptcy. I couldn't think of the word file all of a sudden for some reason. Does that ever happen to you where you're like, the word, but it won't enter your brain so it can come out your freaking mouth? That's just what happened to me. But anyways, they were forced to file for bankruptcy. So they've had a lot of financial challenges. I mean, I'm sure that it would be a struggle to go to work after dealing, with losing your daughter in such a terrible way. It would be it would be difficult to lose your child in any way, but in this way, like the mental anguish from his daughter's murder, it just continues to plague him. In 2014, he was even involved in a road rage incident, and he said it was spurred by his post-traumatic stress disorder. According to a police report, Pahler was cut off in traffic and followed the vehicle into a nearby parking lot, where he allegedly opened the car's door and pulled the driver out by his shirt. David Pahler was charged with battery, which was ultimately dismissed, and pleaded no contest to misdemeanor vandalism. He received probation, a $500 fine, and he was ordered to take anger management classes. He had told the newspaper called the Tribune at the time that his PTSD really caused him to have a lot of anger issues. Elyse's younger 3 siblings also completely struggle because they no longer have any privacy. So I do also want to mention that Elyse's murder was inspired by a movie. The movie Jennifer's Body. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the movie Jennifer's Body that stars Megan Fox is about a girl possessed by a powerful demon after a rock band tries and fails to sacrifice her to Satan. She then comes back to life to prey on her male classmates while her friend tries to stop the bloody rampage. The 2009 film was actually loosely inspired by this crime. And the 1995 murder does bear a striking resemblance to the plot of the movie, other than her coming back to haunt her male classmates. I wish that had been what had actually happened. I mean, I believe that people can be haunted, and if there's a way that Elyse can haunt, especially Joseph Fiorella and Jacob Delashmute, I hope that she haunts them every fucking moment of the rest of their fucking useless lives. Although this film became a cult classic, many people did criticize Megan Fox's performance because at that time she was really only seen as a pinup girl and not really as a great actress. And I heard she's a bitch on sets. I have not heard a lot of nice things about her, but honestly, back in the day, she was always like my girl crush. If I was going to have a girl crush, she would have been it. I don't really know if she is anymore. Not really. She is beautiful, but what turns me off about her now is that she's married to that disgusting Machine Gun Kelly, and I cannot stand Machine Gun Kelly. And if you're a fan of Marshall Mathers, you shouldn't be a fan of Machine Gun Kelly either. And if you don't know the deal with that, then go do a Google search about their relationship. But anyways, so that's the story, guys. It's a terrible one. It's a terrible, brutal, sad, just disgusting. I mean, I can't even, for the life of me, even imagine, what that poor family has gone through and continues to go through. So, whatever you can do, send some positivity, some prayers. I know I say this all the time, but, they need our prayers. They need our thoughts. I don't know if the family has ever started any kind of foundation, or I don't believe they have. I guess I'd have to, do more research on that, but I did a lot of research on this case because I listened to 3 different podcast episodes, people who had done this case, because what I usually do is if I'm interested in a case, I'll usually go and check like how many other podcasts have also done the case, because I don't mind doing like really popular cases because it's fun, and I know a lot of people like tend to like them. But it's also really fun for me to really have to dive into doing a lot more research because it's a lesser known case or a lesser talked about case. So on this one, I found a few. There weren't as many podcasts that had covered this case as some of the others. Like I know I just did the Lululemon recently, and there was, so many podcasts about that. So, anyways, what I'm getting at is I listened to a few podcast episodes from 3 different podcasts that covered the Elyse Pahler murder. One of them was a very well-known true crime podcast, and I noticed that their episode about Elyse Pahler seemed really lengthy. I think it was like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. It was well over an hour. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm probably going to hear a lot of details that I maybe didn't find in my own research. So, I was really interested in that. And yeah, they totally turned me off because they spent the majority of their episode either going off topic with their banter. And I don't mind a little bit of banter when I'm listening to podcasts. You guys have to let me know if you like banter or no banter. I try not to do too much. If I do it, I try to do it in the beginning or at the end. But anyways, they kept doing it the whole time. And then they spent a lot of time bashing the 3 individuals that committed the murder. And while we know they're fucking assholes and douchebags and every derogatory word out there, they just spent so much time, joking about what they look like and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to post pictures on my social. Y'all can see what they look like. They're really nothing to look at. One thing that I did notice that I thought of right away is that, which one is it? The one that's getting out soon, that's being paroled. Royce. When you look at his picture when he was in court as a teenager, the first thing I thought of was the very first Twilight movie with Taylor Lautner and the Jacob character with that fake ass wig, like the long hair. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Because I was a Twilight groupie back in the day. I was a mom. I had kids that loved Twilight, but I read all the books at the time, and I loved Twilight, so I could not wait to see the movies. I was literally disappointed by all the movies, but I was Team Jacob all the way, and I hated that stupid wig that Taylor Lautner had to wear in the first movie. But anyways, when I saw the picture of of Royce Casey in court as a teenager, that's the first thing I thought of. So other than that, I'm not going to make fun of how they look. But that particular podcast episode spent a lot of time, talking about that. The other 2 episodes were extremely short. They were both good. So, I don't know. One of them kind of said a couple of things. It made me think, where did they find that bit of information? Because it was information that I never heard. And the more and more I researched it, I could not find that information. So I left it out of my notes completely because I don't know if they made it up or where they got it. I don't know, how true that source of information was. So I thought, I try to make sure that, I do my due diligence and I only put things that are absolutely true into my podcast episodes, and I'm going to list my case sources. There are a lot of them on here on this episode, because it seems like the more of a I don't want to say smaller case, because this is not a small case. It's a brutal, terrible crime that involves real people and real families. But I noticed that the less known it is, the more research I have to do, because I have to go through, like, it feels like 20 different case sources to find even the smallest bits of information. And then when I type up all my notes, I have to, like, take bits and pieces from all of them and, find the pieces of information that repeats itself, so I can pretty much figure that it's true. So anyways, a lot of times there's a lot of false information out there. So, and when I source anytime I list a case source as Wikipedia, I don't literally take it from the Wikipedia page. I go down, I scroll all the way to the bottom, and I read all of the sources from that Wikipedia page itself. It's just easier for me to list Wikipedia as my case source, just so you guys know. But I'm going to post about this on social. Check it out. I would love it if you guys, go there and post your thoughts on it. How do you guys feel about Royce, being paroled soon? Do you guys agree with it? I do, because he seems like he really turned his life and his attitude and his feelings around, and he's totally focused on being a Christian now, and he wants to I believe that he wants to work as a substance abuse counselor in California, if he does actually get out and nobody tries to screw him over. So while that was a terrible crime, I have to think back to when I was 15 or 16 years old, and while I never murdered anybody, I did some asshole-ish things and things that I'm not proud of now, and I would not want to be judged now, and I would not want to be punished by the things that I may have done back then. I wouldn't want to still be having to relive that. Although murder like this is terrible. Like, I've never done anything, like, close to it, but I'm just saying, like, it sounds like he would never, ever be a repeat offender. And the other two, I'm not sure that I could say the same thing. So I hope they don't get out any time at all, if ever. Unless they just start really showing some remorse and, like, changing, their attitude completely. But I wish nothing but happiness and healing vibes to the Pahler family, and also to the families of all three of those fucking murderers. I mean, there's more victims than just Elyse Pahler and her family. Like, when you stop to think about it, like, if you've ever had a family member that has been, in prison for a crime that they committed, that the entire family suffers. So, prayers to everybody. And, yeah, guys, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I'm researching, guys, like, I'm researching literally 4 different cases all at the same time. I'm a little all over the place, because whenever the mood strikes about a certain case, that's when I start researching it. So I've literally got 4 cases, 4 sets of notes, almost completely written. And I'm not sure which ones I'm going to release, but one of the 4 is going to be another Patreon episode. I know I just released that Patreon episode last week, but about Dylan Redwine. But I am going to be posting another one soon to replace the one about the heart murders. Because that was my first Patreon episode ever, and I shared it with the entire universe last week, so I feel it's only fair that I replace that Patreon episode with another Patreon episode, like a true Patreon episode. So anytime in the future that I'm either short on time and don't have a chance to fully research and write up notes for a new episode, if I ever pull from a Patreon episode and, send it out there to everyone in the world, I'm always going to replace it. So in case you're thinking about becoming a Patreon, it's only $5 to get access to everything. And anyways, I'm going to be replacing that episode very, very soon, within the next week or so. And then in August, there will still be the August episode coming out. And then I'm also going to have one of those 4 cases be next week's episode. So which one is it going to be? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. Whichever case I feel like finishing the research on. I don't know if any of you guys have that type of personality as well. But yeah, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, and it kind of just goes by my mood. And sometimes my moods can be swinging, if you know what I mean. But anyways, guys, I hope that you guys have a wonderful Sunday, a great week ahead of you, and I will see you next time. Be sure to follow me on Instagram if you're not already, and go over to the Patreon. It's patreon.com/alwaystalkingcrime. Check it out. See if it's something you want to try. Doesn't mean you have to do it every month, but if you jump on there now, there's actually, going to be 3 episodes for you right there to binge on, and I'm going to be releasing 2 more by the time that August is over. So anyways, guys, love you all. Appreciate you listening. Hit that follow button on whatever platform you're listening to this right now. If you're listening on Apple, it'd be fucking awesome if you gave me a 5-star review. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice of you? I think you should go do it. Until next time, guys, keep talking crime.